Welcome to Chicago Jewish Cafe. Today, once again, we have the pleasure and honor of hosting Rabbi Seth Farber, the founder and the leader of the ITIM, the organization that he established about 20 years ago in order to help people to go through conversions and other regulated by rabbinate procedures affecting Jews in order to make it much easier. But today, we have invited Rabbi Farber in order to find out what's going on now with people that Rabbinate does not consider to be Jewish, that is, Jews who are by father Jewish. And because I know that some of them had difficulty, being killed in fighting during this war. By the way, Rabbi, I hope that you are safe and your family is safe and that everything is going to be fine for you and all of your loved ones.
Thank you. Thank you. This is indeed a very difficult time. We have children who are serving in the army and on the front lines, and it is a very, very complicated time. And of course, for waking up every morning in Israel and seeing the news over this weekend, we had 14 members of the armed forces that were killed, and it's been a very, very painful day, and it's been a very painful couple of months, since the beginning. And one of the issues we're going to discuss are one dimension of it, but of course the multiple dimensions of it are devastating and very, very painful on a daily basis for people like me and for pretty much every Israeli.
I appreciate you being almost on front line. I mean, because as I understand, the rockets are still falling from Gaza, not only on Ashkelon, but also on Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and even Haifa.
Yes,
and we do not know what is going to happen yet on the northern border because there's 150,000 rockets waiting to be shot at Israel.
Right. Well, again, it is a very complicated time, and we did spend some time last week, and even in the center of the country in the shelters. And at the same time, it's a country that is a lot of resilience, and we're confident that in the end things will be for the better, even though this is a very, very painful time. And at the end of the pain, we hope that there'll be some avenue for peace and maybe even more than that. But for now, it's just we need to be victorious. We need to win first and excise the terrorists. It's not a small bunch, but they're hooligans and they're thugs, and they have no sense of the infinite value of human life. And it's very tragic. And it's tragic that so many Palestinians are being killed. And of course, it's terribly tragic that so many
they want to rule Temple Mount.
Yes, look, I don't know what they want. I don't even know who they are. Yeah. But I know those people who want us dead and are willing to do anything to make that
without
happen.
any doubt. Whatever they want all of us dead. And not only you there, but also us here.
Right. So
in any case, Rabbi, my main interest during this conversation is going to be focusing on people who are Jewish by father, but who are not recognized as Jews in Israel officially, and many of who serve in the army, some of who were already killed during the service.
Right. So Israel has two different definitions of at least two different definitions of what it means to be Jewish. One for the purposes of immigration or aliyah, and one for the purposes of getting married in this country. And for the purpose of getting married, you have to have either converted in an Orthodox ceremony or have your mother being certified as Jewish. Whereas for the purpose of aliyah, to emigrate to Israel, you can have any Jewish grandparent as long as no one's gone through, converted out of Judaism. And because of that, actually, 560,000 people in Israel are recognized as, in Hebrew, chasrei dat, or in English, lacking religion. That is, they're Jews by identity, but they aren't halachically Jewish, at least according to the definitions of the rabbinate. Many of these people were encouraged to come to Israel as Jews. Some of them were victims of anti-Semitism. Many of them are from the former Soviet Union, but not exclusively. Many from the United States as well, and France, and South America more and more. And often, not only were they encouraged to come on Aliyah, move to emigrate to Israel, but they pay taxes, and they serve in the IDF as well. They're fully part of Israeli society, and the place where it really meets them is when they come to get married, where they're told, you're not Jewish enough to get married. And of course, we've discussed this in the past, Alexander, that one of the things that I work on in ITIM is trying to make a more mainstream, streamlined conversion process that enables those who want, we're not missionaries, but those who want to convert, and we even run.
Rabbi, we already spoke on this topic,
Right.
and you know that I disagree with you completely. I mean, I disagree with the rabbinate, and I disagree with you completely. For me, a child of a Jewish father, regardless who his mother is 100% Jewish.
So
the Kedushin 68b, for me, is the greatest sin that our people have committed in our 3,000-year-long history.
So I understand that position, and the way I articulated myself last time, and again, I'll reiterate the position just here before we get to launch into the discussion of today, is that I think today we have to not just only deal with the sources, but we also have to deal with the reality. The reality on the ground is that the overwhelming majority of Jewish Israelis do accept the way Judaism has been defined and how it's evolved. I don't deny it's evolved that way over the last couple of thousand years. And because of that, those who want to join what I would call the mainstream Jewish community, whether it's right or wrong, or that's
accepted,
what God wants,
I would say
I have no idea.
Join is one.
I'm an Orthodox rabbi.
Right.
I'm an Orthodox rabbi, but I don't pretend ever to speak for God. God can speak for God's self. But I do believe that those who want to join the mainstream should do that. And I strongly believe, and I think this we do share in common, is that if someone was encouraged to come here as a Jew, and someone who has a strong identity as a Jew, and someone who pays taxes as a Jew and serves in the IDF as a Jew, certainly should be able to get married as a Jew. That I think we agree upon. So in that sense, we've worked very hard on that. But the bottom line is that many of the people who are fighting on the front lines, who serve in my children's units in the army, they're serving with them on the front lines. They don't right now meet the halachic definition of Jew, and that doesn't mean that they should be deprived of basic rights, especially when they're putting their lives on the line. Or
made feel uncomfortable.
Certainly not. Absolutely, that's the case. They've, to some extent, they've gone through the fire of Judaism, so to speak. Some of them, I can tell you, some of them want to, I know one person who came out of Gaza just to convert and then went back in. He said, I can't do this anymore and live a double identity. But many people don't want that, or don't want that right now, or can't do that right now. And where it's really meant us at ITIM, with the massive number of people who were killed on October 7th, and then subsequently in the army, in the ground fighting, is that you have people.
What is your estimate? How many people of those now, 1,300 or
1,300, right,
would be in the category of having only
it's probably in the tens. It's probably in the tens. That's my guess. In other words, it doesn't meet the 6. It's not 6% of that community. But that being said, it was, even though 6% of the Jewish population of Israel is in that category of the lacking religion, but it's probably in the tens. And what's happened is, the truth is, on the third day of the war, I wrote a letter on the 10th of October. I have back and forth letters between me and the chief rabbi's office in Israel saying, I think we need to come up with a solution for this. Now, more than 10 years ago, I was involved peripherally. I don't want to take credit for things I wasn't involved in, but I was peripherally involved when this story came up in the issue of in the context of soldiers being killed in the line of duty, and the army, after a prolonged discussion and analysis and working with the chief rabbi, etc., came up with a way for people who were killed in the line of duty to be buried, so to speak, inside the walls of the Jewish cemetery. Whereas there's a way to do it that doesn't offend any halachic sensitivities.
But what about that guy what about that guy that was buried outside the fence and then they
took down the fence? In the IDF 10 or 12 or 13 years ago, this was an issue, and it's become a non-issue because there was a halachic solution that was found, and I'm proud of that. As an Orthodox rabbi, there was a halachic solution that was found, and it's been implemented in many places. And I wrote to the chief rabbis.
I congratulate you, but the solution that
So let me explain to you. So what happened was, I wrote to the chief rabbis on the third day of the war and said, I'm paraphrasing, but I said, hey, this is going to be a challenge. There's a lot of people who were killed. As we discover who they are, some of them are going to have the status of that would make you in general feel uncomfortable with this. But I said these people were killed al Kiddush Hashem, in sanctifying God's name. They were killed as Jews. And there are many, many traditional texts, halachic texts. I'm thinking about a 16th century commentary written by a rabbi in Poland named Rabbi Joel Sirkis, where he speaks about a comment that was written, almost 1600 years ago, in the Mishnah, that talks about if people are found in the field among Jews, even if we're not sure of their status, we bury them as Jews. And that was actually codified in one way or another. It wasn't necessarily the normative codification. It didn't happen. It didn't happen all that much. But the argument I made to the chief rabbis was, I think there's an opportunity here to prevent misinformation from going out. And what we can do is adopt what the model of that we did in the army.
Are you speaking about Rabbi Lau?
Yeah, I'm speaking of Rabbi Lau as the chief rabbi, and I got a very forgive this, but I got a very parv response from him. And over the course of the last couple of months, it's come up a couple of times. Most recently, a little over a month ago, where there was a woman who was killed actually on the 7th, but by the time they identified her body, the remains, and brought her to burial, etc., in Beit Shan, which is a eastern, border city with Jordan, in central Israel, but central east, and this woman, because the chief rabbis, and again, this could have been avoided, but because the chief rabbis hadn't issued an equivocal decision that said that people who were killed in this context of the war or in terrorist attacks just before it should be buried, again, with the nuances in place, but should be buried among the Jewish community. She was actually buried outside the fence, so to speak. This was something that caused an enormous uproar, and in my opinion, justifiably so. And over the course of the following weeks, a number of groups, a number of members of Knesset as well, there was even a Knesset hearing about it in one of the Knesset committees. And eventually, as you said, Alexander, in that particular case in Beit Shan, they took down the fence. They actually didn't fully take down the fence, to be perfectly honest. I would have preferred if they totally taken down the fence. But they made gestures towards the community. They said this was something that shouldn't have ever happened. And there was even a ceremony, a Jewish ceremony led by a rabbi at her burial spot. What is important to note is even before this began to change, and even before there was a big brouhaha, there's still Jewish ceremonies going on all the time for people who are killed, even if they're not halachically Jewish, meaning for those families that want to say Kaddish, even if they're not halachically Jewish, they allow them in all places to say Kaddish, and they say the Psalms, just like they would say in any other burial. In this particular case, like I said, there's a nuanced way to do this that would be much more embracing, and that's something we've been advocating for since the third day of the war. Honestly, between me and you and the listeners, it's happened in most places. Most places did bury families like this in the way, families with this kind of status, they buried them in a way that was acceptable to the families.
A little bit lower than everybody else?
Lower in the sense of in the ground, you're asking? So nowadays, the truth is that there's 3 different types. Again, we can get to the details of this, but there's a number of different types of burial plots. Israel, sometimes they're double plots, whereas today they've stopped burying people in single plots because we're running out of space. So they bury people in single plots that have a 60 centimeter difference between the 2 plots. Imagine they go down, I don't know how to translate this into inches, so forgive me. But even if we do it in centimeters, so nowadays there's all sorts of different depths. So the
16 centimeters is about 5 inches. It's a big difference.
No, but they vary. In other words, let's say let's say a husband and wife pass away. And there's no question, there's no issue about their status. They'll dig the plot deeper and then have 60 centimeters of dirt and then have another plot on top. So when you ask, are they deeper than some or not deeper than some? The answer is, it really depends on which some you deal with, because all soldiers are buried in soldiers, and again,
but husband and wife, if one is Jewish, another is not Jewish.
That's an excellent question.
Yeah,
that's an excellent question. So that's exactly, I'm talking about even if both are Jewish, they do that. So it depends on the situation. One of the, when you ask me like, what's the difference? So again, one of the issues that came up was if you were burying someone outside, this particular one was single, but if you bury someone and then their spouse wants to be buried with them, so what are you going to bury this one inside the cemetery, this one out? No, there were all these nuances there, and that's why there are solutions. There are very clear solutions that can be done. It really doesn't differentiate in the end, where there's no sense of this is being done this way, this is being done that way, because all sorts of things are being done all the time about all sorts of different things, right? You wouldn't say that soldiers are being discriminated against because they're being buried in caskets, whereas the average person is not being buried in a casket. No, they just, the army has their way of doing things that makes it different. So there's no silver lining to this story. That's the truth, because right now, like I said before, we're in a very difficult time, in a very tenuous time, and a very painful time. And that being said, I think what's happened, the fact that this issue rose to the surface, I don't think it should have ever risen to the surface. I think if the Rabbinate had been more responsible, it wouldn't have risen to the surface. That being said, now that it's risen to the surface, I think there are solutions in place for the most part. And I think in most cases, families will feel more embraced over the coming, should it happen again, families will feel more embraced. But again, all of us pray that this won't happen, and that there'll be no more death, and there'll be no more
I hope so.
no more sorrow.
I hope that you're right. But I have to say, in my dealings with Rabbi Lau, I found him a person who does not keep his word and who cannot be trusted at all. His father was very different.
I don't want to make comments, certainly not negative comments. I have a very complex relationship. I'm not trying to justify his behavior.
You disagree with me, that's fine. But
no, I wouldn't say that I disagree with you or agree with you. I don't want to make judgmental statements about anybody, right? Especially not right now. Right? What I want to say is that there's a solution in place, and if it had to happen this way, I wish it hadn't happened this way, but if it had to happen this way, hopefully for the better good, for the hundreds or thousands of families over the next X amount of time, that will feel more embraced and feel more part of society, even if they're not in my vision or the vision of Orthodox, or the vision of the Rabbinate, halachically Jewish, they're here, they're part of Israeli society. We need to embrace each other and come up with a plan forward, because in Israel, particularly in Israel, again, the North American Jewish community has a different set of issues with this, but particularly in Israel, we have a shared destiny here, and that shared destiny involves everybody here. Whether their mom is Jewish or their dad is Jewish, it doesn't make a difference as far as that goes. We have a shared destiny.
Agree with you.
Embrace each other. Again, I still believe, I know we disagree with us, but I still believe that the issue of shared destiny and shared responsibility, which maybe engenders shared destiny, also involves a great responsibility on the part of the Rabbinate, which I'm part of, to come up with a way, if those who want to be fully part of this other piece of it, the action, then they should be part of it as well. But and I only see conversion as a route to that. But I believe it can be done. But all that being said, it's irrelevant to this discussion, because in this discussion, it's 100% certain to be embracing.
I just want to say something, that it bothers me, in a big way, that Rabbinate cannot find an acceptable solution. I mean, the Rabbi Avadia Yosef in 1973 found solution for Ethiopian Jews. And then, not simply solution, but he stated very clearly in his ruling that they're 100% Jewish. Then they were forced to go and accept some form of conversion, which was very easy for them. Now, I believe that something like this can be, not conversion, because conversion does not solve the problem of 68b, because it makes officially, halachically, it makes Abraham and Sarah the parents of a new Jew. And I want to reaffirm that the father is the father is the father is the father, and we call him father, and the child is not born an orphan.
So I understand that, and I'm very sympathetic to that position. And that being said, I differentiate between what was clearly the historic norm. You can't argue. I mean, some people would argue with that, but I don't argue with that. And the way Jewish tradition has developed, I'm not willing to pay the price. I think the price is too high to pay right now for us to simply dismiss that community if it can be done another way. And I still believe it can, and that's what I'm working on.
Okay,
That's what I spend a
you're
lot of my
doing
time
very
working on.
important work. You're
And in
doing
that sense,
not simply.
I respect someone else's, other people's opinions in this matter. I don't claim to have any, like I said before, I don't speak for God, and I don't claim to have the ultimate truth or the only truth. And all that being said, I'm a pragmatic sort of fellow, and I do believe that in my commitment to halacha, there's a pragmatic way to do this, which would enable people to be, in a generation or so, to be fully part of this. And look, I hope we're successful. I hope these kind of episodes,
I'm very
don't
happy.
raise their ugly head, because they shouldn't.
I'm
They
very
shouldn't.
happy that you are what you are, doing what you do. This is very difficult work and very important. Now, Rabbi, I want to ask you a question. Among the fallen soldiers or people killed, on October 7th, were there any lone soldiers that would fall into category of father Jewish, mothers not?
Yes, there were. There
What
definitely
happened to
were.
them? What happened to them? How
So,
they're informed? How their relatives
so their
abroad are
relatives
informed?
were brought to Israel. They were embraced. The government participated in their burials. They were buried as soldiers and fully, I can't speak to where in the cemetery they were buried, because I don't remember. I wasn't involved in particular any of those cases except for on the periphery, reading about them, etc. But I know the families were brought to Israel. This is a great example. Israel pays for the families to fly to Israel if it's a lone soldier. Israel did not differentiate between if the mother was Jewish or the father was Jewish. They flew people from Moscow or through Moscow to Israel directly. They put them up I know in two families' cases, they were put up in the Hilton Hotel in Tel Aviv. There was a shiva there, even if the family wasn't halachically Jewish, they had a shiva that the government ran for them. They had hours, they put up the burial notices, all the rituals associated with modern Israel for soldiers, all of them were, I wouldn't say imposed on the family, quite the opposite. They offered the family. Most of the families whose kids had come as lone soldiers, most of those families said, tell us what to do, we're happy to do it. I know people in my community went to play shiva calls at these families. And even though they knew they weren't halachically Jewish, but they went to visit them and to mourn with them and to console them for the loss of their children. So even though there are, like I said, there are moments which I think we could have lived without, there's also beautiful moments. Those are beautiful moments in a twisted sort of way, because you never want this to happen, right? We want to meet those parents, at the Wailing Wall when their child is being sworn in and handed a Tanakh. And we want to meet them when their child is going through officers training school. We want to meet them on the benches there as their kids are marching in celebration of the modern state of Israel. We don't want to meet them at their child's funeral. That's not the place where we want to meet them. So there's something very beautiful about saying the Jewish state embraces these families, and the officers who speak at these funerals speak to the parents in Hebrew, of course, with the Russian translator. And they said, you are now part of our family because your child died here. And there's something special.
Rabbi, if the rabbinate is not going to find the way to overcome this issue, to change it fundamentally, it will destroy state of Israel. It will destroy our people more than any Hamasnik.
So I don't know more than Hamas or less than Hamas, but I agree with you 100%. The state of Israel's mission, its destiny, is not to dismiss these people. I love to put it in the context, Alexander. Forgive me for putting on my rabbi hat for a moment.
Please.
This week's Parsha, I don't know when this will be, sent out, but this week's Parsha, you have Joseph saying to his father, Jacob, when Jacob finally is reunited with Joseph, and Jacob asks Joseph, who are these two little boys that I see you running around with? They look very Egyptian to me, right? His two sons. And he says, I want to introduce you to these are my sons that he says, Asher Natan li Elohim bazeh. These are my sons that God gave me here. Now his sons, forgetting about whether they were halachically Jewish, their mother was an Egyptian priestess. But what's awesome about that sentence, which again is in the beginning of Parshat Vayechi, is that is that Joseph gives his father a lesson in understanding, in theology. He says, Dad, I know these kids don't look like the way you thought they were going to look, but this was obviously part of God's plan. So it's not the rabbinate.
I
It's not
guess
the rabbinate Alexander who says,
I guess for Jacob it was easy to understand, given that he had children from two sisters and two slave girls.
That's true. That is true. And all that being said, for Jacob to look at his grandchildren and say, they look Egyptian, but they're really part of who I am. And this was part of God's plan, right? That is a fundamental recognition.
And they're
that
children
I think today
Israel.
we still need,
they're
we still haven't
children of
gotten to.
Yaakov. They're children of Yaakov. They're children of Yaakov, children of Israel. And that's what we are. And we deny the children. You know, a few years ago, I spoke to Sergio de la Pergola from Hebrew.
Sure, he's a prominent, right, sociologist.
Yeah, a demographer, you know, probably leading. I did not know what happened to him now. Probably he's still.
No, he's still the leading demographer.
So I asked him, Sergio, how many Jews there in the world? He tells me, well, the way we count according to Halakha, about 14.5 million, maybe 15 million. I said, great. And all of them consider themselves Jewish? No, 2 million don't consider themselves Jewish, meaning they converted to Christianity or just simply said, we do not want to have anything with Jews. I say, and how many Jews from father and non-Jewish mother? He says 9 million. And I say, how many of them consider themselves Jewish? 6 million. This is the statistic, but statistics for me is nothing, because every child counts. Every child. When you have laws, I do not know where the rabbis got the audacity to state that this child is not his child. We do not call him his son. Where the audacity comes from? Where the...
I understand your discomfort. I get it. Again, I want to be pragmatic about this issue, because this is probably the most, like you say, this is the biggest issue facing the Jewish people right now.
Yes.
Right now, it's hard to talk about it when you see there's imminent death on our doorstep. And all that being said, the larger picture, the larger narrative about Jewish history in our period is the land of Israel, is the state of Israel going to be a place that's embracing the broader definition of what it means to be Jewish, which includes those 6 million, includes maybe other people as well. And my answer to that question is 100% clear. Absolutely, Israel will have failed in its mission if it doesn't provide not only a second home or a first home to anybody in those communities who wants to be here. That being said, we still have a second area or a second dimension of what we have to do here if we're going to fulfill our mission, which is to make sure that all those people feel about the other one that they're part of their community. And that's a challenge. That's an equally hard challenge. Once we break through the ice of saying, yes, we're all part of the same fabric.
Rabbi,
can we say, but can we feel comfortable, or what does it take for us to be able to be comfortable enough with each other? And what are the prices that each of us are willing to pay to do that? So I think what you would call Orthodox or Halakhic Judaism, or the rabbin, or whatever you want to call it, has to pay a price. It's not in my opinion, it's not a hefty price.
What price? Right? What price are they paying for it, other than becoming morally fine with God? I mean, the reason I'm talking...
It's a very simple price. I'll tell you what it is. It's very simple. They have to say that what might have been, right, a marginal position within the halachic process about how to do conversion should become the essential position in this particular time, because these are the needs of our people. And
you're talking about conversion.
The non-halachic community has to pay a price and say, we're willing to go along with that because it doesn't demand the demands it's going to make of us are worth it, so that we can march forward together in all of our aspects and not just in some of them. That's the way I see it. But again, who am I? Who am I to say that anybody can pay that price? I'm just trying to preach.
Rabbi, you're the frontline soldier in fight for the moral goodness of our people, without which we cannot exist as people. And
It's
I
not just
just,
we can't exist, it's we can't march forward together. We don't have a story to continue. We won't continue our story.
I'm sorry, there's a very clear threat from God against us for doing things like this. And that is Shmot, Exodus 22, 22, 23, where God says very clearly, you abuse widows and orphans, you meaning plural.
Mm-hmm.
They scream to me, I will hear their voices, and I'll make your wives widows and your children orphans.
Mm-hmm. So again, I feel like we have to be able to march forward. Again, I am very hesitant. I'm very skeptical on either side, with people quoting me biblical verses and where there's curses telling me this is what's
I
going to
understand.
happen. I don't like when anybody tells me that. I don't. I'm a student of the Bible. I'm a student of the Talmud, and all that being said, I don't try to apply particular verses to anybody or any particular
I'm
situation.
not saying that they
I'm
apply
very skeptical about that. That
for
being said, I feel like my reading of Jewish history and my reading of the rhythms and the ups and downs of Jewish history, and I have a PhD in Jewish history also, is that this is an opportunity, this is a moment in time where if we're going to continue our story together, I'll even put it a different way. Not doing what I'm suggesting is going to be paying a much heavier price, much heavier price for the future of the Jewish
I
people.
agree with you, but maybe there's another way. Maybe we can take Avadia Yosef's decision of 1973, when he already was chief rabbi for Sephardic Jews, and make something of it, because at that time he said it very clearly that Ethiopian Jewish community, which had centuries-long patrilineal attitude toward who is a Jew, was fully Jewish.
Right. Again, Rav Ovadia Yosef also said, and it's unfortunately not being implemented, he also said that when people come to Israel from the former Soviet Union and they say, we're Jewish, we should believe them. And that isn't being implemented in the rabbinical courts as well. So I use that psak halacha, that decision, all the time, but it doesn't carry me forward because the judges today are just not willing to do that. So I have to be realistic and try to, work with them on trying to make this happen. But again, I don't think in the end our visions are so far apart about the way it should look. It's more like what are the tactics we get there, we use to get there.
I guess making what we're doing now, hopefully, few hundred people will hear it. And
I hope. Again, if people are more interested, they're invited to come to. You can go visit the ITIM website or come, be in touch with me directly. Certainly,
well, that's why we put there, so people
yes.
know where to go. Because
Thank you for that.
I want people to support you, morally and financially. I want to support your organization, because what you're doing a very, very important thing, for the entire our mishpucha. I mean, it's important thing. In any case, so Rabbi, I thank you for help. By the way, I asked you in correspondence before, if you collect the names of people like this, if there's a list of people like this.
I don't believe that there should be a list of people like this. There is a list in the Interior Ministry of people who were listed as lacking religion, but it's part of the identity.
But the reason I'm interested in a list like this, because I want to make it public.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's a private list. It's information that's part of the government archives.
I understand that this is private until the relatives are announced, and then it's made public. I mean, right now.
Right. Correct.
So, for me, making it public is part of the way of embarrassing the Rabbinate.
So again, I'm much less interested in. I'm more interested in solutions than I am in
That's good, Rabbi.
only floating the problems. Okay, thank you very much. And again, I hope the
Thank
listeners
you,
found this,
Rabbi. I
engaging.
appreciate your courage, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your expertise. I thank you very much.
Okay, we'll be in touch. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.